Hi, welcome back to my channel, that is Aditya Knowledge Academy. In this video, we are going to discuss the 8th class history. So, the first chapter, that is how, when, and where, class 8th history. So, here you can observe the contents which we are going to discuss in chapter. That is, first one is how important are dates and which dates are important, what is colonial, and why surveys become important, and how do we periodize or divide history, and how administration produces records, and the last point, that is what do official records not tell us. So it is completely all question wise topics we are going to discuss. This chapter already you are little bit discussed in the sixth standard, and so then in this chapter we can discuss briefly. So before going to the lesson, let us understand what is the how important are dates. So history is certainly about changes that occur over time. So it is about finding out how things were in the past and how things have changed. So for this reason, we have to keep in mind important dates. As soon as we compare the past, so with the present, we refer to time, and we talk of before and after. So, living in the world, we do not always ask historical questions about what we see around us. So, we can take things for granted, right? So, granted as if what we see has always been in the world we inhabit. So, before going to this, let me say a few remembering points so that we are discussing in this lesson. So, that is, history is certainly about changes that occur over time, that you can keep in your mind. And in this lesson, in 1817, James Mill, the very important points I am talking about. In 1817, James Mill, a Scottish economist and political philosopher, he published a massive three-volume work. Okay, and the third point, moving away from British classification, historians means what we say, one who writes the histories. For them, we will say historians. Okay, historians have usually divided the Indian history into ancient, medieval, and modern. So the important source is official records of the British administration. And the fifth point, that is the practice of surveying, also become common under the colonial administration. So these all five points we are going to discuss in brief. Fine. So here you can observe, we see that the world around is changing all the times, and history shows us how things change over many hundreds of thousands of years. When we use words like the past or nowadays, we are really only comparing the past with the present. So, and this power to compare the past and the plan the future is history's gift to us. So look at the things around you. You can daily activities you can see. Do you know how they started? So who invented the electric fan, and when and why? When did people start using furniture made of wood, and where, and how and why? All those questions arises in our mind. And when and why did people start drinking tea and coffee, and who were the first people to do so? So we, when you are traveling, you might have observed, want to ask your elders also, like how did people travel long distance before there were trains and aeroplanes? Means past, like if you take 1600 C, like that. Okay. uh, we also sometimes wonder how the people who make newspapers know the news before us, or who invented printing. All these questions arises in our mind. So you, here you can see the first point, how important are dates. In the past, people believed that history was about dates. Many still believe so. You may have heard your friends say, I hate history because what's the use of memorizing dates? And but history is so much than that. So if we study history, then only we come to know what happened in the past. So what are the changes occur during the from past to modern, like that. Okay, so here I haven't given one example. The first locomotive used by the East Indian Railway Company in 1854. So this is the very important thing. Fine. Such historical questions take us back to notion of time, but time does not have to be always preciously dated to terms, particular years or months. In fact, sometimes is actually incorrect to fix precise dates to things that happen over many years. And we can say, example, people in India did not suddenly begin drinking tea on one particular day, but they developed the taste for it over time. So, there can be no one clear date for such things. Similarly, we cannot fix the one single date on which British rule was established in India or when the national movement started. So there will be having some kind of dates, so that we cannot say exact dates. Changes take place within the economy and society over a stretch of time, and we can only refer to span of time, or we can say timeline, an approximate period over which particular changes become visible. You can observe this, the Lipton tea, delicious teas, they are introduced in this advertisement help to create the taste. In 1922, advertisements for Lipton tea suggest that royalty all over the world is associated with this tea. So, in this picture, the background you see the outer wall of an Indian palace. So, coming to the why, uh, then we continue to associate history with the string of dates. So, this association has a reason. There was a time when history was an account of the battles and big events. It was about rulers and their policies and etc. So, historians wrote about the year a king was crowned, the year he married, the year he had a child, and the year he fought and a particular war, and to the and he the year he died, and the year the next ruler succeeded to the throne. So all these events, if we come to know the famous kings with the timeline of that kings. So for events such as these, specific dates can be determined, and in histories such as these debates and about dates continue to be very important. As you have seen in the history textbooks of the past 2 years, historians now write about the host of other issues and other questions also. So they look at how people earn their livelihood and what they produce and what they ate, how cities developed and markets came up, how kingdoms were formed and new ideas spread, how cultures and society changes. So all these you learned in the class 6th. So the next point, that is which dates are important. So, by what criteria do we choose a set of dates as important? So, the dates we select around which we compose our story of the past, so are not very important on their own. They become vital because we focus on the particular set of events as important. If our focus of the study changes, if we begin to look at new issues, like a new set of dates will appear significant. So you can consider one example in the historians written by British historians in India. The rule of each governor general was important in this. In these, historians begin with the rule of the first governor general. So that is Warren Hastings, and ended with the last viceroy. So these dates are very important during that time. And Lord Mountbatten, in separate chapters, we read about the deeds of others also. And the Wellesley, Benstick, and Dalhousie, Canning, Lawrence, and Hardings, Irvine. It was a seemingly never-ending succession of the governor, governor generals and viceroys. So all the dates in these history books were linked to these personalities. So to their what we have to learn in these dates, to their activities and policies, and what are the achievements they have done in during their period. So it was as if there was a nothing outside their lives that was important for us to know. The chronology of their lives marked the different chapters. So this is the uh, information about which dates we have to keep in mind. For example, I say Warren Hastings became the first Governor General of India in 1773. So like that. So when we write history or a story, we divide it into chapters. Why do we do this? Because it is to give each chapter some coherence. It is to tell a story in a way that makes some sense and can be followed. In the process, we focus only on those events that help us to give shape to the story we are telling. So, because of that reason, we do. In the histories that revolve around the life of British Governor Generals, the activities of Indians simply do not fit. So, what they do, they have no space. What then? They clearly we need another format for our history. So, this would mean that the old dates will no longer have the significance they earlier had. A new set of dates will become more important for us to know the information. So the next point, that is, how do we periodize? So starting, I said in 1817, James Mill, a Scottish economist and political philosopher, he published a massive three-volume work. So uh, what is the problem with the periodization of Indian history that James Mill offers? So here in 1817, James Mill published a massive three-volume work, that is a history of British India. Sorry, a history of British India. So in this, what are the characteristics? That is, he divided India history into three periods, that is Hindus, Muslims, and British. So he thought that all Asian societies were at a lower level of civilization than Europe. Okay, according to his telling of history before the British came to India, so he religious intolerance, like we can say Hindu and Muslim despots ruled in the country during that time, and religious intolerance, caste taboos, and superstitions practices dominated social life, and he felt that only British rule could civilize India. So he suggested that British should conquer all the territories of India to ensure the enlightenment. So he presented British rule as a period of progress of civilization and the period before British rule as darkness. So he characterized the age only through the religion of rulers of that time. So this is the fact of that thing. So, in Mill's idea of history, British rule represented all forces of progress and civilization in India, and the period before British rule was dark. Would such things be accepted today also? In any case, can we refer to like any period of history as Hindu or Muslim? So, this is an example of, according to the historical research, the world's first clock was invented by Ziyong, and Buddhist monk and mathematician of the Tang dynasty. So this is one example for that. And here you can see most of the some examples. So moving away from Millie's religion center, British centered classification and modern histories divide Indian history ancient, medieval, and modern periods. So science and technology also improved during that time, and where the modern periods was associated with the growth of all the forces of modernity, that is science, reason, democracy, liberty, and equality. And medieval was used to describe the society when these features of modern society did not exist. But as you will see in this book, Indians under modern British rule did not have equality, freedom, or economic growth and progress. So many modern historians instead refer to this period of colonial rule. So, what do you mean by colonial rule? So, here in simple words, we can say colony means conquest of the country or establishment, um, their rule. Or we can say colonialism means can be understood as an extension of nation's sovereignty over that of another's territory or people. So, this is often instituted with the intention of making use of the dependent countries' resources and manpower and markets. So let us now see how the British came to conquer. So, how did the British conquer India and establish their rule? So, the British conquered India in the following ways, that is, they subjugated local Nawabs and Rajas first, and they established control over the economy and society, and they collected revenue to meet all their expenses, bought goods, and they wanted to low prices and produce crops they needed for export. So these things happens, whatever the products available in India, so they export it to their country and sell in the higher prices, and they are most what we say incomes, and they whatever the uh, prices or products crops they want to needed to grow in the India, they bought here. Say they bought changes in rulers and tastes and customs and practices also they introduced. Thus they molded everything in their favor and subjugated the country very soon. So this has happened when the British colonial they started. How administration produce records. So here, what sources of data of historians use in the writing about a period, the last 250 years, for example, of Indian history. So the one important source is the official records of the British administration, because the British believed that writing was very important. So what they do, why did the British preserve official documents? Because the British believed that the act of writing was very important. So every institution plan, policy and decision or agreement and investigation had to be clearly written up. So things could be properly studied and debated it if it was clearly written up. The British also felt that all important documents and letters needed to be carefully preserved. So that's why they made this archives and what we say some libraries also. So you can even today you can see these archives. You can read the letters and memos that moved from one office to the British government to another in the early years of 19th century. And the British also felt that all important documents and letter needed to be carefully preserved. To preserve the documents, they set up record rooms also. In the early years of 19th century, these documents were carefully copied out and beautifully written by calligraphist. So here calligraphist means one the person who is specialized in the art of beautiful writing. So you can observe this picture and see. So how will the information historians get from the old newspapers, that we can learn in the next slide. So why did the British do preserve important official records and letters? So this is the question. So why? Because the British felt that need of preserve all the important official documents and letters. For this, they set up record rooms attached to all administrative institutions. So the village tahsildar's office and the commissioner's office and the provincial secretaries, the law courts, all had their record rooms. So that they established the specialized institutions such as archives and museums to preserve important records. So coming to the another example, this is one example, custard apple plant in 1770s, botanical gardens and the natural history museums established by the British collected plant and specimens and information about their issues. So this plant they introduced to grow here. Okay. So why surveys become important? So here we can say what is mean by survey. Survey means the act of examining and recording the measurements and features etc. of an area of a land to prepare a map or plan for it. So this is called survey. So the practice of surveying also become common under the colonial administration because the British believed that a country had to be properly known before it could be effectively administrated. So that reason they started surveying the land. So by the early 19th century, the British started carrying out detailed surveys to map all of the India. In the villages and revenue surveys were also conducted to know about the topography. So, and topography and quality of soil, flora and fauna. You know that plants, particular area of type of environment or period of time, that is called flora, and fauna means that is animal category it will come. Okay, so British believed that they had to know, and from the end of 19th century, census operated started. That is, were held every 10 years. So, how did surveys become important under the colonial administration? Because the British gave much importance to the practice of surveying because they believed that a country had to be properly known before it could be effectively administrated. So, therefore, they carried out detailed surveys by the early 19th century in order to map the entire country. So, this is one old logo of the Survey of India. So what they did, they conducted revenue surveys in villages. They made efforts to know the topography, the soil quality, the flora and fauna, the local histories, and the cropping pattern. They also introduced a census operation held every 10 years from the end of 19th century. They prepared detailed records of the number of people in all the provinces of India and nothing information of castes, religion and occupation. And they also carried on several other surveys such as botanical surveys, geological surveys and forest surveys etc. In this way they gathered all the facts that were essential for administrating a country. The next point, but why, what do official records not to tell us? So here, from this vast corpus collection of administrative records, we can get to know a lot, but we must remember that these are official records. So they tell us what the official thought, what they were interested in, and what they wish to write record and preserve for posterity, that is future generation. But these records do not help us understand what other people in the country felt and why they did what they did. So all these will be carries in this record. So here you have seen that trigonometrical survey of India. This mission they are using in 1802. So for that we need to search for other sources which is although found in plenty or little more difficult to get than official records. So you can observe this the ancient city of Dwaraka found in underwater. So these are the few examples which they found in this. So all these sources, however, were produced by those who were literate and do not help us understand. And what we say was experienced and lived by the tribal and the farmers, the workers in the mine. So another question, historians divide Indian history into what we say into ancient, medieval, and modern. But this division too has its problems. What are those problems? So here, periodization has been borrowed from the West, where the modern period was associated with the growth of all the forces of modernity, such as science, reason, democracy, liberty, and equality. So, and medieval was the term used to describe the society where these features of modern society did not exist. It is difficult for us to accept this characterization of the modern period. So the country also lacked economic growth and progress in the period. It is therefore many historians refer to modern period as colonial period. So this is the points we want to discuss in this class. And here you can see the picture that is what we say this is the rebel of 1857. The picture, this image needs to be carefully studied for the project the viewpoint of those who create them. This image can be found in several illustrated books produced by the British after the 1857 rebellion. In this image, you can observe the captain at the bottom says, mutinous sepoys share the loot. In British representations, the rebels appear as greedy, vicious, and brutal. So you can read about rebellion in chapter 5 briefly. So these are the few points we want to discuss in this chapter. And you what is the another one is the what is the use of newspaper as a source of history. So the printing press, which was invented in Germany in the 15th century, came into common use. So this resulted in the mass printing of books, newspapers, which were important sources of information. So the historians, many biographies of great people were written which give us authentic information about the people and the times in which they lived. So with this I'm going to end this chapter. Next video we will discuss in the another chapter. Thank you for watching.